Top 12 running backs for 2024. These are our lists, and we will be sticking to them, contractually obligated to stick with these top 12s until the season starts. Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It's Adam, Dave, Jamie, and Heath. Hey, Heath, welcome back.
You know, you said something before the show that really, really confused me. And so I just want to start. I'd like to start off with me asking you a question. You were talking about sledding with your kids, and you said you didn't sled, but you pulled them.
Yeah, on the sled, yeah.
Where I'm from, if you go sledding, somebody pushes you and you go down a hill. Were you like just running around your driveway pulling them on a sled?
Backyard.
Okay.
And they're too young.
Did you have a tractor or a car or something you were pulling them with?
Rope at the front of the sled.
And you were the one like running or walking, pulling them.
I was jogging. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have been pulled on a sled, but it was behind a truck on the road.
No, they're 3 and 5. I can't just let them go down a hill. I had to,
just strap them to a tractor. You're good.
I almost wiped out, man. Like it was really icy. It wasn't like mushy snow. It was icy, and I'm with the sled, and I was like, oh, almost completely lost it. So
like a horse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like a reindeer out there, but one that was slipping. So
probably more like a pony.
And Heath said something before the show about Christian McCaffrey, so we're going to get to that. Some quick news and notes, then we'll get to our top 12 running backs, early top 12 running backs for 2024. Mark Andrews was limited in practice. Would love to see him play this week against the Texans. And Christian McCaffrey practiced in full, so he's good to go. But Heath, in terms of playoff challenges, what little conundrum are you running into?
Yeah, the conundrum that I've run into is, do you play Christian McCaffrey this week in leagues where you can only play a guy one time? I mean, obviously, what you would like to have if you think the 49ers are going to be in the Super Bowl is that you have McCaffrey as the hammer for the Super Bowl, but there's no guarantee he's going to make it there. And I think this is probably the best matchup that he's going to have on his way there. This might be a week where he scores 35 or 40 points. And if somebody else gets those, it'd be kind of hard to make that up.
That's the challenge of the playoff challenge in these formats is when to use these players. Like I'm in one where I think the Chiefs could beat the Bills. I have a little bit more confidence in Buffalo at this point, but I'm going with I could play up to 3 quarterbacks. So I'm playing Stroud. I think they're done. I'm playing I used Love last week. I'm playing Stroud. I'm playing Baker, and I'm playing Mahomes. So I play 3 quarterbacks, but I'm going with a Chief stack in this particular lineup of Kelsey as well. And it's like you lose those guys if they advance, to not have them for potential 2 more games. But that's the choice you make, is when do you use your key guys, and if you don't use them, so like let's say you don't use McCaffrey this week, and let's say you try now they advance, they're in the NFC Championship game, you want to use them for Super Bowl, and they get knocked out. And like you said, you didn't get those 40 points. So that's the tough call. It's really difficult sometimes with these leagues, but that's the fun of it.
Yeah, I would probably wait just if you felt confident in him being in the Super Bowl, or because he's basically matchup proof, right?
But you also want to get his most points. That's the thing.
Well, the other thing for me specifically, I'm playing in the Baby Bowl, which is a charity. Raises money for some good causes, and I've got like a 10-point lead on the field. I finished first out of everybody. Well, I'm kind of just thinking, let's just stack a lead and hope that nobody can catch me in the Super Bowl. I'm planning on actually stacking one side or the other of that Lions-Bucks game, because I figure this is the Lions' probably last game indoors. So even if they make it next week, they're probably not as good. Or just go with Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin.
Wow,
but it's also like you said, though, you want to make it to the Super Bowl and have players.
Right.
That's the biggest thing, is like, how do you get to the final game while still having the ability to field a full lineup?
That was a very, really elaborate humble brag there.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Took a lot. Yeah, it took a long way to get there, but it paid off.
Did not go unnoticed. Dave Richard, the Cleveland Browns fired 3 members of their offensive coaching staff. Coordinator Alex Van Pelt has been the OC for 4 seasons there. Running back coach Stump Mitchell and tight end coach T.C. McCartney, all fired by the Cleveland Browns. And they actually, surprised to me, they ran the most plays in football in 2023 and 7th most in 2022. But any reaction to this, Dave?
I think it's interesting that these guys got fired after the year that the Browns had. Think about all the different quarterbacks that they went through, running backs, losing Nick Chubb early on, and they were still able to be a successful team. So it's almost like, what did these guys do, Van Pelt especially, to fall out of favor in Cleveland? We'll see what the reaction is and what the move after that is. But Stefanski's been calling the plays this whole time in Cleveland. So Van Pelt's probably been more of a sounding board than anything else. I'm curious to see who's moving into that role, especially the OC role, to be that new sounding board for Stefanski.
All right, Mike Tomlin says he's going to coach the Steelers in 2024. Tyler Higbee did tear his ACL. That stinks. Sorry to hear that. And I don't know why I thought Gerard Mayo went to Florida. He went to Tennessee.
Yeah, that was a bad one.
I don't know. I really remember him being on the Gators. Like, I really feel like the
You're
internet.
thinking of Brandon Spikes.
I'm not thinking of Brandon Spikes.
I remember you guys talking about yesterday. It's like, all right, maybe they're right on this, but I didn't think Mayo went to Florida.
No, I really think everyone's wrong, and some has a big conspiracy here because I just remember him being on UF. But all right, I guess he went to Tennessee. So congratulations to the Tennessee Volunteers who now have a head coach. Heath, I wanted to promote FFT.
I heard Robert Kraft wanted to hold the Mayo, though.
Yeah, exactly. FFT Dynasty every Tuesday. You guys did a live Superflex startup Dynasty mock draft yesterday. We were all part of it. It was a lot of fun. But what do we have coming up in the offseason, Heath?
Well, first off, it always reminds me when I do one of those how good you are at your job, because hosting a podcast while you're doing a mock draft, in this particular mock draft, I ended up drafting for 2 teams. Oh, very, very, very difficult. But yes, we got Jagger May from Football Guys coming on next week. We've got a bunch of guests lined up for the weeks following those. We are going to talk playoff risers and fallers. We will have more mock drafts. We eventually might even get to more than one show per week.
That'd be great. All right, check it out. Fantasy Football Today Dynasty. You can scan that little QR code there. All right, let's get to our top 12 running backs in 2024. First question for you. Was it difficult to come up with the back end of your top 12? It certainly was for me. Was it difficult for you guys to come up with the back end of the top 12?
No.
I don't know if difficult is the word. No.
I mean, 11 and 12 specifically were tough for me. But
like you couldn't find players to fill those spots, or you had too many players to fill those.
No, I couldn't. I didn't feel like I had 12 guys, so I really felt.
No, I have 13.
I think there was actually a week between the time when I sent Jamie my top 12 running backs and my top 24 overall, and my top 12 running backs might have changed in that time.
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah, mine did.
Receivers have changed, that's for sure. But okay, so no difficulty there. Okay, fair enough. Second question was, what were you looking for in your top 12 running backs? Did you care more about projected workload, efficiency, both? What was most important? Jamie, I'll let you start there. What was the most
upside?
important?
So yes, the players that I think have the chance to be close to workhorse backs in terms of playing on passing downs, getting goal line opportunities, taking a step forward from where they were this season, so to sort of tie in your first question, the tougher ones for me were, Saquon Barkley, who's 12, and Josh Jacobs, who's just outside of that. where are they playing next year? And so that's, the tough call. But really, in terms of the question marks were, somebody like Devon Achane, is he going to be the lead guy, and in what capacity will he be the lead guy? And then, for me, it was the only real struggle I think was where to put Bijan, because of the hope of what the new coach and system will be. So, one thing that I wrote about, and again, when we go through these, you can see all of our top 12s on the site. You can see our top 24, and it's not just the 4 of us. It's also Jacob Gibbs and Chris Towers and Dan Schneier, contributing to listing their top 12s as well. Was trying to see, okay, who's different and who has, different, talking points, to make it interesting. And the Bijan versus Gibbs ranking debate was interesting. I think it was 4 and 3. I forget which way it went, but pretty even split of who likes one of the two, now sophomore running backs over the other.
All right. Anybody else want to comment on that, or should we just unveil the rankings?
Let's unveil them.
Let's do it. Okay. Number 1, McCaffrey, right?
One
Yeah,
and two are the same for all 7.
How far into the offseason will we get before somebody starts getting worried about McCaffrey's age? Like at some point in June or July, there's going to be articles coming out. He's 28 years old. Remember what happened to Eckler last year? Yada, yada, yada.
I think it's just something that you have to know and accept with McCaffrey. And I sat in this exact same spot 3 years ago, going on and on about he's had 5 injuries in the last 13 months or whatever it was. And I was nervous about him, but he changed. He told everybody he changed his offseason routine, changed the way that he, put his body together. And for whatever reason, with, some fortuitous luck included, and probably going to San Francisco, that helped too. He's managed to stay healthy and just super reliable. And he's like 5-6 PPR points per game better than everyone else in the field when you look at the entire season. He's like Kelsey at tight end. Or maybe we should be saying that Kelsey's like McCaffrey at running back.
He's almost, or probably even more, better than everybody else than Cooper Kupp had been the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And
what happened to Cooper Kupp?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that the 2 names that you mentioned, Austin Eckler and Cooper Kupp, because Eckler had the holdout situation, and how much did that change? Not his training regimen from him personally, but just being in football shape. And, look, he had an ankle sprain, so that's not necessarily a soft tissue injury, but it is an injury nonetheless to an older player, and they may be a little bit tougher to come back from and come back at the same level. I think the thing that worries me a little bit with McCaffrey is it's not just that he's going to be older. It's now back-to-back seasons, you assume, of 2 long playoff runs. And so that's a lot of wear and tear on his body, especially for somebody that's got an injury track record. So again, for the people that are going to have the number 1 overall pick, and we're going to get a lot of the Justin Jefferson got hurt and McCaffrey got hurt, and is the one spot cursed? And you don't want to necessarily take that player. What he does when he's on the field, when he's healthy, is not matched, and you could say maybe Breece Hall gets there, maybe Bijan or Gibbs get there if they get those opportunities. And, certainly we saw CeeDee Lamb, for example, outscore him from a total points perspective, so taking the receiver makes, a little bit more sense, as we talked about last year with the safety factor when we were talking about Jefferson versus McCaffrey to begin with. So there's going to be a lot of debate about who should be number 1 overall, but when McCaffrey is right, when he's healthy, when he's on the field, there's no one at that position that does what he does.
You can also make the case that if you draft McCaffrey, we'll assume that we'll know who the backup is, and knowing the track record of 49ers running backs, that running back is going to be someone that we immediately start. Can't expect 25 PPR points per game, but 15, 18 could potentially be in that range.
The problem with that is if it's Elijah Mitchell, is he going to be healthy the week that McCaffrey misses?
Right. I'm not sure if it's going to be Elijah Mitchell at this
point.
Well,
we'll see. I mean, as of now, you should be planning on Mitchell, so if for whatever reason, you can still make transactions, you pick up Mitchell if he's available wherever he is. I mean, like I made it a priority in Heath's draft to draft Mitchell, and I've done it in a few drafts that we've I've done it in the 2 drafts that we've done already, and I made sure in my dynasty leagues to try to acquire him or roster him throughout the course of the season, because if he is in this role behind a 28-year-old McCaffrey, we've already seen him as the lead running back for San Francisco be very, very good. Again, not McCaffrey good, as Dave said, but still very good. Startable, top 20 type running back. So you want that on your roster if you can have it. And again, if it's somebody else, then you go and pivot to that. But for right now, it's Elijah Mitchell, and I think that's the approach you should have.
He's going to be 26 next year, and it's a contract year. So the only way he's not making the team is if the coaches don't like him anymore.
Let's get to not McCaffrey here. Let's get to Breece Hall. But there is obviously a clear curse of the number 1 overall pick. The last 4 number 1 overall fantasy picks have missed at least 6 games. McCaffrey twice, Jonathan Taylor, and Justin Jefferson. Okay, so that's indisputable. Number 2, I guess, for everyone was Breece Hall, Jamie?
Everyone was Breece Hall. All 7 people were Breece Hall.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, yeah, I'm in on that too, but I think that's pretty interesting that it was unanimous, guys.
Yeah, I mean, look, he had an amazing finish to his season, and we talked about this last offseason, that year 2 coming off the ACL tear is typically when these guys bounce back and play at a high level. He accelerated that timeline, which is great to see. And you hope better quarterback play, hopefully better offensive line play. And we get the best of what Breece Hall has been, which has been unbelievable. The first 4 games of his rookie season, and then the games that, showed how good he can be in his sophomore campaign. So I mean, my goodness, it's a lot to love about him. I have a brutal call in a keeper league where I have to decide between McCaffrey and Breece Hall, and I keep them forever. So I only get to keep one. And so I drafted Breece Hall with the idea of, okay, this is a guy. McCaffrey was my keeper. Draft Breece Hall with the idea of he'll be my next keeper in case something happens to McCaffrey. And now I'm torn because the upside for McCaffrey for the next 3-4 years, comparatively to Hall, is not the same. Hall's upside is much more.
Oh, you got to go Hall.
Right, but I won the league. I'm gonna try and win it again. McCaffrey gives me a better chance if he's right.
He's gonna miss at least 6 games. I just told you that, McCaffrey.
Potentially. Don't jinx him.
It's not me. I'm not jinxing him. It's everyone else is gonna jinx him. He's gonna be 101. All right, so we probably don't need to spend much time on Breece Hall. So let's go to 3, 4, 5. Give me your 3, 4, 5. Heath, you can start.
Yeah, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Kyron Williams.
Gibbs, Bijan, Kyron. Okay, Dave.
I'm one of the guys that changed the sophomore running back order after we had to send it in. My order as of now is Bijan, Gibbs, and I have Jonathan Taylor at 5.
Yeah, let's do 3 through 6 because I figure does everybody have Kyron 6 or
6 or higher?
Yeah,
he's 6th for me.
It's 3 through 6. Bijan, Gibbs, Kyron, Taylor in some order for everybody.
Yep.
All right, so let's do that 3 through 6. So sorry, start again. So Heath, your Gibbs, Bijan, Kyron, Taylor.
Gibbs, Bijan, Kyron, Taylor.
Dave, you are
Bijan, Gibbs, Taylor, Kyron.
Bijan.
Same exact one.
And Jamie, you're Bijan, Gibbs, Taylor, Kyron.
Yep.
Okay, and I went Bijan, Taylor, Gibbs, Kyron. All right. Who's got like a hot take about why either Bijan or Gibbs is number 3 ahead of this, at the top of this group of 4?
I don't think there could be any hot takes until we find out who the coaching staff in Atlanta is going to be. And then I could definitely be influenced by their hire and what their coach says about splitting up touches. I do think it's more likely that Gibbs sees a larger share of the workload next year relative to the share that he saw this year. I also don't know for sure, like this Ben Johnson, he wants $15 million to be a head coach. What if the Lions just say, hey, we'll pay a 10 to stay as our offensive coordinator?
Then I don't think any coordinator is making 10.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot.
They would be doing something that no one's ever done before. That would be wild.
If you look at the last 9 games of the season for Jahmyr Gibbs, that was when Montgomery came back. Look at those 2 guys. Gibbs was the number 10 running back per game in both half and full PPR, and that was with a pace of 17 total touchdowns, but only 245 touches. So that's Jahmyr Gibbs. He was number 10 per game in half and full PPR. Montgomery was number 18 per game in half, number 20 per game in full PPR. So, look, that's a little scary for a guy who could be a top 5 overall pick. He was terrific. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry. And then you look at the first playoff game. I mean, Montgomery got more. There's just no indication that Gibbs is going to outcarry David Montgomery. He actually scored more touchdowns than Montgomery over the last 9 games. He scored 8 rushing touchdowns. Montgomery scored 7. And then there are 2 receiving touchdowns for Gibbs. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Dave. What do you think about that split? 245 touch pace for Jahmyr Gibbs, and a 255 touch pace for David Montgomery.
Right. We saw them work pretty close to 50-50. And I would imagine that that's going to continue even if Ben Johnson's gone. The only way it won't continue is if Montgomery regresses, coaching staff falls out of love with him, or if he gets hurt, and then that opens the door for Gibbs. But Gibbs still has great numbers when he's getting at least 50% of the snaps, 18.1 PPR points per game. That's 2 points better than his entire season average. So there's still plenty there for Jahmyr Gibbs to be great for fantasy managers, even though he's sharing. It's because he catches the ball more. It's because he's more explosive. And I know that Ben Johnson leaving, that's going to be a wild card, but there is a chance that the Lions just say, hey, what we've been doing is great. Whoever the new OC is, maybe it's someone who's already there on the staff. They just keep doing what they did this year, and everything kind of just rolls right back into place. Gibbs is exciting, but I think there's a little bit more upside for Bijan now, knowing that Arthur Smith is gone. A new OC will be there. Could be run heavy where Bijan gets the majority of the work. And his numbers when he's had at least 15 touches exactly the same as Jahmyr Gibbs, and there's room for that to grow because he can get more touches.
I want to continue this. We got to take a break. We're going to continue this conversation in just a moment. We're going to be right back after a quick break here on Fantasy Football Today.
Another chapter in one of the NFL's most epic rivalries.
Kansas City and the Bills have had some epic matchups, to say the least. Could be another one here.
So we looked at the last 9 games of the season for Jahmyr Gibbs, and he was on pace for 245 touches. He was the number 10 running back per game. How about the last 8 games for Bijan Robinson? That's when things kind of changed. It was that first game against Arizona. He started becoming more of the goal line back, and they featured him more, so to speak. He only had 51% of the team's running back carries, but he was actually on pace for, 300 touches, 236 carries and 64 catches. And that was something, Jamie, I mean, that I think might surprise people. He had more catches than Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson. Do you expect that to continue?
Yeah, I do. I mean, he profiled as an amazing receiving back. Steve Sarkisian even said he was, I think he prefaced it by saying, I'm going to piss off some of my receivers, but he has the best hands on the team, and so, what he was expected to do, he just didn't do it over the course of a full season. We saw, bits and pieces of, I think, what his upside could be. And that's, to me, what is the most encouraging thing about it. And if you recall, I wrote a whole magazine story about him becoming the best rookie running back ever for fantasy purposes. And he certainly fell way short of that. But, the hope would be is that, okay, Tyler Algier goes into the Elijah Mitchell role, we're going to use him maybe a little bit, but, break glass if needed type of player, as opposed to he's getting 49% of the touch. I know it's not him, but I'm saying, what I mean? Like there's somebody else taking Bijan off the field way too much. And while I think there'll still be a split, I think the split will be much more in the favor of Bijan from a positive standpoint, as opposed to what the Lions situation is, because David Montgomery is a much more skilled running back than Tyler Algier and more proven. So that's why I lean a little bit more toward Bijan. But I think Heath said it best. Like, until we see who the coaching staff is, it's more hope than anything else. Because if it's, let's say, Belichick and he brings in Josh McDaniel, and we know what that Patriots system has been, where they like to use multiple backs in some capacity, it may not be the upside of Bijan. Not that he's going to fall out of the top 5 or 6 or even 10, but he certainly could fall a couple of spots behind Taylor and potentially behind Gibbs if you're so inclined.
How are we feeling about Kyren Williams and Jonathan Taylor right now? Bijan and Gibbs are young, they're exciting. Not that Kyren Williams and Taylor are old, but Kyren, like I heard you say yesterday, he's the kind of guy that scares you in Dynasty with his profile. Taylor hasn't really been that elite playmaker each of the last 2 seasons. Last 2022, he had the high ankle sprain that he was playing through. This year, he was good, but not amazing like he was in his first 2 seasons. So, like, Heath, how are you feeling about them? Are you feeling like they're still, I shouldn't say for Kyren, but I don't know. Do you feel the same excitement about them that you might feel for Bijan and Gibbs?
Not the same excitement. Like there's a tier after those first 3 backs, I think. But it's a weird thing because Kyren is exactly the type of running back who scares you with his profile because they have so little invested in him. But as we talked about, Jamie and I on the show yesterday, the guys who have been replaced with that little draft capital have mostly been guys who have seen coaching changes. And as long as we don't see a coaching change for the Rams, then I think, like we saw James Robinson, Dameon Pierce, there were coaching changes, and then they went with different guys at running back eventually.
The example you used, not to cut you off, I think is relevant, is Pacheco.
Right. Yeah, because Pacheco didn't have a coaching change, and he's been okay. He's the same type of profile, a guy who would scare you because the team has so little invested in him. I think that the thing that worries me with Taylor relative to Williams is how little Anthony Richardson threw the ball to his running backs last year. Just 11 of his 84 passes went to running backs. And then how little the team, even when Gardner Minshew was quarterback, threw the ball to Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
And so I think you look here, it was 3 catches a game for Kyren, basically 2 for Taylor. But in the second half of the season, I think one of his last 6 games, Taylor had more than 1 target. And that game he had 2 targets. They just didn't throw to him at all late in the season. And I think Richardson's really not going to throw to his backs very much. I obviously, maybe it's not obvious, but I think Jonathan Taylor is a much more talented running back. He is the type of guy who could, like, there's a reason he was the first overall pick one year. But I'm not sure that this situation will be quite as good for him as it is for Kyren, assuming that all the pieces, coaches and quarterbacks, are who we think they're going to be.
It's funny you mentioned the passing game work. I wonder how much the final play of the season for the Colts maybe changes some things in how they approach Jonathan Taylor in the passing game, because he wasn't. I know he was coming, dealing with the injury in the second half of the game against Houston, but he's not on the field in their most crucial play. And you could say, okay, we're going to fool the Texans. We're not going to throw it. We're not going to, Taylor's on the field. They know it's coming. He's going to get the ball in some capacity. But I mean, they used the third string running back in their most important play of the year, and the play faltered. You could say it's bad throw by Gardner, but I mean, I would hope that he can get to 40 catches. If he can get to 40 catches with what his potential is, I mean, this is a guy that's led the league in rushing one season. He scored 20 touchdowns one season. If he has a 40 catch year and potentially 20 total touchdowns and, 1,500 plus, if you want to be conservative, if he stays healthy, rushing yards, like, that's going to be a top 3 running back.
Yeah. By the way, so Richardson, very limited sample size, but if
they didn't play a game together,
if he had qualified, he would have had the 4th lowest running back target rate. But here are the 3 quarterbacks that threw to their running backs less frequently than Anthony Richardson did: Joe Burrow, C.J. Stroud, and Matthew Stafford. So, Kyren, what did Kyren have? Kyren had 32 catches in 12 games, on pace for 45 catches.
Right. So you could see Taylor getting that.
Yeah, you just have to get like all of the catches, right? Even if your quarterback doesn't throw that much to running backs, you just have to be the guy that's playing all the time. All right, so I guess the top 6 was it consensus, Jamie? Did anybody have a different running back in the top 6?
I will tell you right now. So
Taylor and Richardson did play together in week 5, but it was not very much.
Did anybody have
I think I might have had ETN at one point when I first sent mine in, but I didn't the second time. Yep.
Jacob, no. Dave originally had different 6. He had Achane 6. Dan, nope, same 6. And Chris has Achane over Williams.
Okay. Yeah, Achane, I mean, he's super interesting. All right, so let's go 7, 8, 9 here. Why was 6 afraid of 7? Let's go 7, 8, 9. Dave, who's 7, 8, 9 for you?
Well, first you got to tell me why 6 was afraid of 7. I'm dying over here to find out.
You already know.
Achane is 7 for me. ETN is 8, and I currently have Saquon at 9. This is when I stopped using my pen and started using pencil.
Right. Achane, ETN, Saquon for Dave. Jamie, 7, 8, 9.
Achane, ETN, and Rashad White.
Okay. Heath?
I had ETN, Achane, and Kamara. After the ETN Achane duo, no idea. Don't want to draft any of those guys. I'll just wait until round 10 and draft a backup.
And you were the only one to have Kamara in the top 12.
Yep.
And that's
everyone's scared of his age.
That was my question of, was it hard to fill out the back end of the top 12? And nobody said yes, but Heath, it seems like the answer is yes.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, I don't want to draft any of these guys.
Okay.
It wasn't that hard.
I mean, I should have had Pacheco in there. I feel like Pacheco deserves it. I didn't have him in there, but I feel more confident in him now. But yeah, like I got to the point where it's like, I have James Cook in there. Do I really feel like he had 2 rushing touchdowns? But no, I think
I like Rashad White. I'd probably move Rashad White and Pacheco ahead of Kamara now. But
I think we have Achane and ETN. Everyone, all 4 of us have Achane and ETN in the top 8 at 7 and 8 in some order. And then we've got a couple of Saquons, a Rashad White, and an Alvin Kamara. But Heath said he'd move Kamara down a little bit. So let's say 2 Rashad Whites and 2 Saquons there. But let's talk about Achane, because those first 3 games, Devon Achane was, 50 points against 51 points against the Broncos, 27 points at Buffalo, 21.5 points against the Giants. Then he misses 4 games, comes back, he plays 3 snaps against the Raiders, misses another game after that, and then he played the last 6 games of the season. But in the next 4 games that he played with Raheem Mostert missed the last 2 of the season, he was the number 20 running back per game. Mostert still got a year left on his contract. So we all had Achane top 8, but it is, I mean, it's mostly based on those first 3 games. So where he's averaging like 12 yards per carry.
Yeah. Where do you rank a guy who might be Chris Johnson, but also might be CJ Spiller?
Yeah, I'm not ranking him based on those games. I'm ranking him based on the final 2 with the hope that he's the lead guy.
Right. But what indication, I mean, what indication is there that they're going to just get away from Raheem Mostert? I know
Again, that's the exercise. Is you're projecting based on what you either think or hope is going to happen. In this case, for me, is the hope that Achane becomes the lead guy. Now, the playoff game worries the hell out of me in that Mostert's coming off 2-game absence with knee and ankle injuries, and they give them the same amount of touches. Like, if you're trying to win a game, especially where you're an underdog in bad weather against a team that, has sort of owned you a little bit, like, you got to do a little something creative and different. And they weren't creative and different with one of their best playmakers. And so if there is Mostert back at 32, I might drop Achane a spot or 2, but he'll still be a top 12 guy for me with the hope that he becomes the lead option and Mostert misses time, because running backs at that age don't typically have a lot of staying power in terms of health if they're getting that much work. If it's Jeff Wilson, I'll feel very good about Achane. If they go out and they bring somebody else in, and this is a team that's a little bit strapped for draft capital, they're down their 3rd and 4th round pick after a lot of moves that they made. And I can't imagine their 1st or 2nd round picks are going towards running backs. But, this may be somebody that's a team that somebody wants to come play for because of how much success they have offensively. So we'll see what happens, what type of market they're in for another veteran if they move on from Mostert. But I mean, again, you saw what he was able to do in 2 losses, but still 2 big games for them against Baltimore and Buffalo. And he was their lead guy, and he had some success, and some pretty significant success. He had 5 catches, he had 3 touchdowns. He can be a star. And, yes, the Johnson versus Spiller comparison is great, or a range of outcomes is great. But I think, if he is the lead guy in this offense, you got to be excited about it. Injury concerns, yes, but you got to be excited about it.
And all those questions is why I have ETN ahead, just because I think ETN's going to probably see 20 touches per game next year, unless he gets hurt or something. He's gonna be over 300 touches if he plays 17 games next year. Probably in at least an above average offense, if not a good offense. Have somewhat of a role in the passing game. There's more upside with ETN. There's just a lot lower floor for him than there is with ETN. And were the Dolphins one of the teams when there was talks about Derrick Henry moving, that were kind of rumors were circling around? I wonder if he's a nice Raheem Mostert replacement.
I think that was the offseason.
Okay.
Before the year. I don't think it was a trade deadline.
Okay, so it's a core belief of Mike McDaniel's to use multiple running backs. There's never going to be a time where one running back is getting the Kyron Williams treatment, the Christian McCaffrey treatment. It's not going to happen. And I'm almost certain that if it's not Raheem Mostert, it'll be somebody else that'll kind of annoy us when it comes to Achane. But if you break up Achane's year, it's super small sample size. Every single time when he had 18 or more touches, he had at least 23.7 PPR points per game. When he had at least 10 carries in 5 games, he had 21 or more PPR points in 4 of the 5 games. 5 games with 11 or 12 touches. That's it. 3 times he was below 14 PPR points, still at double digits, and 2 times he was above 21 or more PPR points. It's humongous upside. It's the type of upside of a player that you would consider as high as number 3 overall. If we knew he was going to be in that role, he'd blow past everybody except for Breece Hall and Christian McCaffrey. But the downside is just how much work is he going to get? I would hope, and this would be an off-season study for us, and then working and keeping a close eye on the Dolphins this offseason to see what mistakes did he make last year. Can they be corrected? And if there weren't a lot of mistakes, then there's definitely a path for the younger, fresher, dual threat running back to earn more playing time than the steady veteran who's 32 years old going into a contract year, who's had like major knee issues in the past.
The other thing that really concerns me when you talk about splits with Achane is that his big games were almost exclusively in blowouts. I remember that first game when he came back from injury and we were worried, are they going to use him very much? And the game's over at halftime and they're handing the ball off to him and resting Raheem Mostert. Mm-hmm. He had the huge game against the Broncos in a blowout. He had the huge game. I think it was a pretty big game in the blowout.
I mean,
right. Well,
he
but
was
a lot of
against
it was
Denver. I'm
part
not
of the
sure if he was against Washington. Was it
Washington
Washington?
was at the end of the game. The Denver game was early in the game.
Yes, agreed. But you know what? To me, that's like experience for him. That's him just gaining that. Like that might have troubled me during this past season, but that's not gonna slow me down when evaluating.
But I think it's
HN now.
relative. It's for me, it's relative to what Jamie brought up at the very beginning, the usage in the playoff game. Like they're in a must-win season on the line game, and they don't think we need to feature Achane as our top running back.
I get it.
Yeah.
If they've got now a full off season to reevaluate everything that they do at every position, and I'm hoping. I mean, this is part of the hope of having Achane as a top 12 fantasy running back. I'm hoping that they'll say, okay, this guy's got a lot more explosiveness, and we need to get him more involved next year. Now that he's had his rookie year and he's had his chance to get familiar with the NFL game, and I was going to say getting used to the speed of the NFL game. I don't know if the NFL game is going to get used to his speed because he is unbelievable.
Mhm.
But I just can't help but think that I don't think the Dolphins are going to come into training camp next year and say, well, we're just going to stick with this very fast but very experienced veteran when we've got this other young player who's just incredibly good and now has a full off season under his belt, knows the system, knows everything. Just, I think it's going to be a completely different deal for HN next year.
Yeah. All right. So I want to bring this up here because obviously Achan's hyper efficient, but we heard Saquon as RB9. We heard Rashad White as RB9. We've talked about ETN as RB7 or RB8. ETN averaged 3.8 yards per carry. Saquon Barkley averaged 3.9 yards per carry. Rashad White averaged 3.6 yards per carry. Now let me tell you where their teams ranked in run blocking, according to PFF. The Chargers were last in the NFL, lowest run blocking grade. The Jaguars 31st, the Giants 30th, the Buccaneers 29th. So I'd love to see offensive line upgrades for these teams because we know what ETN's capable of. Certainly, we know what Barkley's capable of, although he's obviously getting up there in age. Rashad White's never really been a great YPC guy. And I'm sure that's going to concern some people. I will point out he had a very, very difficult schedule this year. But, Jamie, it's the stat that people make fun of me for, but I know people care about it. We're not going to ignore the fact that ETN, Barkley, and Rashad White didn't have great seasons running the football, whether that was on them or not. And I don't even think Barkley's going to be on the Giants next year. But, just talk about that and their inefficiency.
It's definitely a concern when you're trying to, say, okay, who can get to the next level of production, because you'd like to see either better blocking, like you said, or, just the ability to, create yards after contact and do a little bit more of those type of things. But I think in terms of the three guys that you mentioned, the hope would be their role in the passing game is what sort of helps them, exceed some of those potential limitations. And I always sort of look at yards per carry as, okay, how many 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 3rd and 2, those situations where they're getting stuffed or not getting, just getting enough. And that's what's limiting their yards per carry, to break it down in terms of all those different, plays that sort of matter when it comes to that. But I think, in terms of, at least ETN and White, not that Barkley is a dinosaur, but they're entering the prime of their careers,
Right.
and, you see the path to feature workload has already been established, so like Heath said in regards to, Kyron, I don't anticipate coaching changes coming for those two guys. Peterson might be a surprise, but I don't think Todd Bowles is getting fired after, a playoff victory. That seems pretty obvious at this point. And Peterson staying there. So the system should be the same. The roles should be the same. I don't think take Bigsby, for example, because I don't think there's anybody on Tampa's roster that would take the role from Rashad White. Like Bigsby was the one that we thought, okay, maybe if he does anything, and he was miserable, so they seem locked into everything that you look for, doing it all. And so that's why, for me, those guys are in the spots that they are. For Barkley, look, if he goes to the right situation or stays with the Giants, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. It's a good situation for him. You still got to be encouraged. He's what, 26, 27 at most?
He'll be 27 next year.
So you're looking at still at least one more hopeful big season before the age, becomes a question mark. But he still did enough this year that you should feel confident to draft him as number one guy.
I know I've seen a lot from Dan about his lack of big plays, his lack of long runs. But the other thing is, he's had the role in the passing game. They've still thrown to him a lot, but his efficiency in the passing game has just been awful for the last 2 or 3 years. He was below 5 yards per target for the third year in a row. He was over 6 early in his career. And so I do think he was not in my top 12, but just because this time of year, I'm generally pretty worried about 27-year-old running backs who don't have a team. We've seen every single year, one of those guys or two of those guys all of a sudden don't have a team in September because they thought they were worth a lot more than the rest of the league did. So if he goes to a great situation on a team that throws to their running backs and there's not a designated pass catching running back, he would vault up into my top 12 pretty easily. You got to get him a good offensive line or a team that's going to score a bunch of touchdowns. But man, if we get to July and he's still looking for the right fit, I'm going to feel really, really nervous about it.
And that goes without saying, I think for all of us that will drop him if he's not, in the right situation. I am curious though, because you mentioned the age, like you have that much more faith in Kamara at his age, a couple years older. Than
and I was kind of just assuming that he would stick on the Saints, and maybe he won't. Maybe that was a wrong assumption.
No, he could, and they could also move on from him. I think it'd be a surprise.
Right.
Either way, I just think it's interesting, and I don't have the answer off the top of my head. Maybe you guys do. Like, where are those situations, Heath, that Barkley goes to? The great offensive line and the great pass catching. Like, where are those available right now? So. Minnesota's going. Yep.
Would love to see that. Baltimore, not the pass catching, but
no,
they would.
Baltimore would be. I think it'd be bad for him.
I guess. Although I wonder if Baltimore had the right pass catching back that they might, with Monken's offense, that we might see that. Again, not a 80 catch guy, but 50 to 60 catch guy if it's the right player.
What if he went to the Eagles?
That would suck.
Maybe. Again.
What if he went to the Bengals?
That would suck less.
Don't have the offensive line
throwing the running back.
Oh, I see. Like, I think if he were to go into a situation like that, he would make the offense throw a little bit more. Right. I don't think it's going to be
Baltimore
60
would
catches.
Baltimore would not be okay. We're he's not Justice Hill.
I will say, like, that running back targets are historically really quarterback and offensive coordinator driven. Mm-hmm. So I'd be pretty skeptical they'd make a huge change, but they'd probably throw to him more than they threw to Gus Edwards.
And you can tell me if you think Kamara's a lock to stay in New Orleans. 29 years old. He's got $1 million roster bonus on March 22nd. If they make him a post June 1st cut, they save almost $12 million against the cap.
They'll just restructure it and put 2 more years on the end of the deal, and they'll be paying him until 2030. That's what the Saints do.
Sure, yeah. And so if they do that, then he's going to stay in New Orleans. But all bets are off in New Orleans now because they're changing offensive coordinators. There's an interesting rumor that John Gruden's going to take that job. All right, that would be exciting for Kamara too if he stays, or whoever the main running back is there.
We can marinate on that for a little bit. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to talk about running backs 10 through 12 in our rankings when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. All right, welcome back, everybody. They're not even paying attention. I am dancing right now, like literally.
You were dancing to the golf promo.
I was dancing to the golf promo, and the other guys, they're not even looking at this hilarity. All right, running backs 10 through 12. So basically, we've got McCaffrey and Breece Hall at 1 and 2. We've got some order of Bijan, Gibbs, Taylor, Kyron from 3 through 6. 7 through 9 had Achane and ETN for everyone. We saw a little bit of Saquon in there, a little bit of Rashad White in there, Kamara, but I think that's not going to be the case anymore. And so let's go to 10 through 12. Dave, who's 10 through 12 for you?
I have Isaiah Pacheco at 10, Rashad White at 11, James Cook at 12.
Pacheco, White, Cook. Jamie?
Pacheco, Cook, Barkley.
Pacheco, Cook, Barkley. Heath?
So yeah, I think I'm Kamara, Pacheco. I don't think I have a 12.
Would you like me to tell you who it was originally?
I think it was David Montgomery was who I had at 12 before.
You did have Montgomery in your top 12. You had originally your 9 through 12 was 8 through 12 was Kamara 8, Achane 9, Rashad White 10, Montgomery 11, and Pacheco 12.
There we go.
Okay, so
It
everyone
just
has
changed again.
Rashad White in their top 12.
Yeah.
Everyone has Pacheco in their top 12 out of you three?
Yep.
Yes.
And I didn't, but he was 13 for me, but that's dumb. I'm going to make him 11. And James Cook 12. I had Josh Jacobs 12. I'll make Jacobs 13. Kamara was only there for Heath. Barkley is in everybody's top 12. No, that's not true. Heath didn't have Barkley.
No.
Okay. But James Cook. How many of you had James Cook in your top 12?
I do.
I'm going to put James Cook in. Just moved him in over Dave Montgomery.
Good. We all have James Cook. I mean, again, 2 rushing touchdowns. All he needs is that goal line work. If he could just get Latavius Murray had 11 carries.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's just right around the corner.
Well, I didn't really think Gibbs would get it, but they started splitting that. You know, they rewarded Jahmyr Gibbs.
Well, Gibbs doesn't have a quarterback that's going to rush for 15 touchdowns.
Like I said, Latavius Murray had 11 carries inside the 5-yard line. Josh Allen that's not going away, but they will give a running back those carries. It was Damian Harris a little bit. Leonard Fournette even got one, but Latavius Murray got most of them. If he just gets most of Murray's carries, you know, then I think James Cook had 4 carries inside the 5-yard line, and Latavius had 11. Like, give me 10. Give me 6 rushing touchdowns from him and 4 receiving touchdowns. You probably have a top 12 running back. I don't know.
Well, I think the thing that we'll find out is, you know, they changed offense coordinators on the fly. So now Joe Brady has a full offseason, if he still stays as the coordinator, to put in the system that he wants in and using some personnel in different varieties. And clearly they've already made a switch in their backup running back this week, you know, by moving on from Leonard Fournette. So we'll see how this backfield shakes out. Clearly there's going to be another number 2 running back there, whether it's Damian Harris, who missed the majority of the season, or, you know, bringing somebody else, because I don't think Latavius Murray will be 33, I think, or 34.
Don't you doubt Latavius Murray finding a role in
that? But, you know, you would hope that they bring in somebody else. Look, they were aggressive in trying to retool their backfield this offseason, moving on from Singletary and bringing in Damian Harris, so they thought, you know, was going to be their physical running back presence. So it still goes without, you know, you have to have a little bit of caution with Cook. You know, I think most people would probably prefer to draft him in round 3. He could push his way into round 2, depending on how your draft unfolds. There's a ton of upside. You know, we saw at times he was amazing in the passing game, then they go away from him, you know, so there's just like, it's all over the place with how he was used. But when he was on his game, I mean, he was as good as what we said with Achane, you know, just amazing, you know, top 5 potential. So hopefully that's the case on an offense that may have totally different receiving core too.
I will say, talking about these running backs like 8 through 12 just confirms for me, hero RB all the way this year. I'll draft a running back in round 1, and then I don't want to draft any of these guys.
But you say that though, you know, you may be picking 7 through 12, and you're talking about maybe Kyron Williams or Jonathan Taylor at best.
Right.
And if you don't like those guys, you're basically going 0 RB.
But if one of these guys fell to you with the 33rd pick, would you take James Cook there? Would you take
33rd? Sure. I don't think he probably will, but yeah, that's okay.
I mean, I think that's kind of my point. What I was asking earlier is how many of these guys, you know, I said, did you have trouble filling out your top 12? Maybe a better question is, how many of these guys in the back end of your top 12, Pacheco, Barkley, Rashad White, James Cook, Kamara, maybe, how many of them feel like 2nd round picks, top 24 players to you?
Right now, all of them.
Achane?
Achane
I didn't include him.
is by default. ETN's a 2nd rounder.
Figured Achane would be easy.
Saquon, right place, mid to late 2nd round. Pacheco is when I might start getting nervous about 2nd round, but if I'm like at 22, 23, 24, I think I'd probably take him knowing that I've got that early 3rd. It'll depend on what's left at wide receiver. If there's a bunch of wide receivers that I like, and Pacheco's the only running back I like when I'm picking late in round 2, of course I'm going to take the running back and just settle for whichever wide receiver I have ranked the highest when I'm back up in round 3.
If this were last year, you know, I could make an easier case to say, well, just take Josh Allen or Hurts there. But we feel so much better about the quarterback position now than we did a year ago.
Yep.
I'm not sure I'm dropping Allen as much as everybody else. Allen might still be at that 2-3 turn for me.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
he'll be gone by ADP.
Right.
He'll probably be gone by ADP, but
about
in our drafts and in drafts like ours, he's going to go at the point when a manager says, I don't like any of the running backs that are left. I don't love any of the receivers that are left. It's too soon for a tight end. Give me the quarterback.
That's still going to be back end around 2.
Might be.
All right.
I don't think it's going to be that way for me, though.
So, one person happy in our chat says, what about James Conner? I think it's just a great point. Conner with Kyler is top 12.
He's a free agent.
Right.
He is.
Do they bring him? If they bring him back, I hope they do. If he's back on Arizona, is he a top 12 running back?
He's close, but he'd be behind these guys for me.
I'd put him ahead of Kamara and ahead of Barkley.
He's in a contract year. He's not a free agent.
He's not.
What's his cap number this year? I thought this was just a void year.
If it's a void year, then yeah, he's a free agent. I'll double check. We should know this.
I think it's a void year. Pretty sure he's an unrestricted free agent.
All right.
I'm looking right now. He has a roster bonus due March 18th. That's just $1.5 million. They would only save $6 million against the cap if they cut him. I do not see it as a void year, according to overthecap.com.
Let's talk about pancakes here. We're going to get to our emails. fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Send us an email. It's a great time to send an email and ask your questions. Likely to get read on the show. fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. That is the letter I. This email is from Will. Will says, last year we established a last place punishment in which the loser would spend 24 hours in a 24-hour diner, but could knock off an hour for every 2 small pancakes he ate.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, this is a punishment?
When the time came, he went to the diner and he left after 10 hours and 14 pancakes, which still left 7 hours unaccounted for. He claims that they were giving him the evil eye and made one comment, but we say this place is 24 hours and wouldn't have given him a problem if he had just said, you can do your thing and come move on to a new server whenever you want. Now he's won the championship this year. First, would you say he adequately completed the punishment from last year? And second, if not, then are we right in mounting a gentle but firm campaign that an honorable champion would pay tribute by finishing his punishment now? 7 more hours.
But he can still knock off more time by eating more pancakes, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah, just give the man 14 pancakes and call it a day.
Yeah.
So he did 70% of the challenge. I would give him 70% of his payout.
Oh, man.
That's true. He Azer statted his challenge.
Yeah, he can have 70% of his payout.
But if he thought
The
like
rest
he
goes
was,
to pancakes for the league.
did he feel like his life was in danger, or did he just feel like he was ticking off the staff at the diner and that made him uncomfortable?
I was very uncomfortable last night. I went out to dinner with a friend and we stayed there so late. I was like, I think we should go. They were turning off the lights and everyone was leaving except for us. I was like, I think it's time to go. It was really, really embarrassing. It was a very good dinner though. Duck mushroom quesadilla. Does that sound
Why
good
do
to
you
you?
go to the strangest places?
It's a great restaurant.
Were they out of cinnamon raisin bagels, Adam?
Duck mushroom quesadilla.
The same place as the rabbit paella?
Oh God, no. Doesn't that sound good to you guys? A duck mushroom?
I don't
quesadilla?
like mushrooms, so I would get it without the
I
mushrooms.
do like mushrooms.
Do you like duck? Duck is good.
It's fine.
This was terrific.
Sounds
Sweet.
expensive.
It is
I'm pretty cheap.
anything. It's like a $20. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. 18, 20. All right. From Ryan, would you trade Saquon Barkley for the 1.3 in a dynasty league?
Yes.
In a one QB PPR league?
Yes.
The answer is very much yes.
The answer is, I like that laugh. I like the, of course, laugh. That's good stuff. All right.
That's
Thank you.
I wish I was playing in that league laugh.
Dave has an 11:15 that he needs to get to. So
Yeah. What kind of a doctor is it? What did I say before the show?
Okay.
Go ahead, tell him.
No, not gonna do
You don't
that.
want to say it?
Nope.
It's an eye doctor, everybody. I'm going to see the eye doctor.
You must live 5 minutes away from the eye doctor. You're gonna be late.
I do.
You should take Heath with you. He's got an issue.
I need to go to get a second opinion. I went to the eye doctor a couple days ago. Told me my eyes are perfect.
This was Heath reading the draft board.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow with our top 12 wide
Brees Hall,
receivers
what?
and a DFS preview for the weekend. Take care.